to be able to support them. And that means with personnel, with oversight, with marketing, all of those things. I'm an old Navy guy, military guy. Don't outgrow your supply lines. And that there is something to that. The other thing that we've learned is, it might be a great practice that someone's had for 40 years and they do a great job and their culture's great, but you know what? The location. Well, the one that we moved during COVID, we started with 6 operatories. Within 6 months, we had grown so much and the demand was so much, we took the space next to us, broke through the walls, added 4 more operatories in 1 year.
Welcome to another episode of Dental Marketing Go. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I am the CEO of SMC National. We are a dental marketing agency that provide predictable new patient flow for offices just like yours. And today, you're going to be in for a doozy. Dr. Morrison, he is the CEO of a practice, Morrison Dental Group, off the East Coast, and they have 10 practices. And he's going to dive into some nuances about selecting locations that have really made the difference for him to be able to grow to the level that he wants. And then he's also going to share some of his experience on picking the wrong location and then figuring out how to move those locations and not making the same mistake twice. And then also we even jumped into a little bit about AI and how to scale and grow with AI so that way you can keep your labor costs down. This is going to be a good episode. You're not going to want to miss it. All right, Dr. Morrison. So why don't you tell me how many offices you guys have and where you guys are located?
Well, as of next month, we'll have 10. We're located in Virginia, in basically the central and southeast region of Virginia.
That sounds awesome. And roughly how many new patients are you guys seeing every month?
We average...
Sorry to disrupt the show, but I got something crazy to share with you. We are attempting to connect with all of our listeners. We have thousands of people that listen to this podcast, and we want to meet you in person. We have 4 events coming up, and I want to give you a discount code that you can use for the next week to save $300 off your ticket. The discount code is Gary Bird, and the link is going to be just down below. You can also go to smcnational.com/events. I hope to connect with you in person and help each other grow our businesses. Can't wait to see you soon.
With the 9, about 550 per month.
Wow, that's really good. And then, so that's with the 9 that you have right now. And then roughly how many doctors do you have?
17.
17 doctors. Got it. And then how are you, how are you building this out? Like, what was your vision when you started building these practices, and what exactly are you trying to build out to?
Well, my vision when we started, Gary, was the Yellow Pages. So I've been at this a long time.
Yep, I started in the Yellow Pages too.
Yeah. So the vision was initially just to accommodate growth. So we opened a second office in Williamsburg in our first location. Both are still there. Both actually our most productive practices. Mm-hmm. And then we did a de novo, actually geographically separate. A lot of reasons for that. We don't have time to get into that story. Then, as we started to see the industry change, it started to become more competitive with DSOs, consolidation. And we decided that we didn't want to go that route, but we wanted to be competitive, and we wanted to be competitive enough to stay independent. So we have grown to be independent and to stay within our culture and core values.
That's a great way to phrase it and word it. Now, did you know you were going to grow to this size that you're at now, or did you always kind of have that in mind, or is it?
I don't know what size will be 5 years from now.
Okay.
The reality is we've turned down 10 times as many practices as we've acquired or started. And we turn them down if we don't think we can work, they can work within our culture. We could change that culture for the better towards what we do. And and that now, if does it make geographic sense?
Yeah.
We're a real hub and spoke. We have technology centers that go out to practices in the area, like spokes on a wheel, and so we use that. We have two real hub and spokes with a couple offices that are technology centers and things like that.
You know what, that this actually I think would be a really good topic to dive deep into that will help people that are listening, especially those that are wanting to grow their offices. So how much I heard you say there that you selecting a location, like where it's located, is a big part of what you do. And I've heard a lot of doctors say kind of like the first time they picked an office or the second time it was kind of just like, I like that office, right? And you just don't know what you don't know. But then over time,
Yeah,
you begin to learn, like, ooh, maybe I don't want to commute 4 hours away, or maybe that neighborhood I don't like as much as this neighborhood. Can you walk me through kind of what you've learned through adding offices and how important that is to your overall growth strategy?
certainly. Well, you have to be able to support them, and that means with personnel, with oversight, with marketing, all of those things. Um, I'm an old Navy guy, military guy. Don't outgrow your supply lines.
Mm.
And that there is something to that. The other thing that we've learned is, it might be a great practice that someone's had for 40 years and they do a great job and their culture's great, but you know what? The location. And to really make it go, I'm going to have to move it, in which case we're going to lose some of that culture. And is that
Mm.
worth doing it, or should we find another one, or should we do a de novo? And in the last certainly 5 or 6 years, location matters, visibility matters, especially
So,
if you're in a suburban urban area.
so is that kind of how is that how you've kind of transitioned your strategy? Is just like really finding that perfect spot? Because I know you've moved a couple offices where you bought them, you
We
gave it a
have.
go, and then you were like, "Hey, we're moving this thing," and it was far enough away where maybe it would have been difficult to move people and things like that. So,
Yeah, but if you prepare people, we just moved as of 15th of December. Practice we had been at for almost 6 years that we had acquired, and it was an okay um, location. Even for visibility, it was okay for its location, but it wasn't high visibility. We also had outgrown it, fortunately. We'd outgrown the number of treatment rooms. So we moved it to a very high visibility area, bought the building, doubled the size of the treatment rooms. And in fact, that's next to it will be our 10th practice, which will be separate from our branding as a specialty practice.
awesome. Okay. And then what outside of like picking the right location, actually let me rephrase that. In picking the right location, what's really worked for you? How do you know if a location that stinks and this one's great?
Well, we independently, I send 3 or 4 people from our team, our marketing, um, chief of marketing, somebody from business development, and myself, and we independently drive the area. Then we look at it. We do things like pull the comprehensive plan from the county or the city. What's scheduled or approved for that area? And the other thing is, and you can also, it's easy to get, what's the vehicles per day in front of that building? And what were the vehicles per day 5 years ago? What are they today?
Mm,
Up the other office that we moved back in 2020 during the height of COVID. We were building that out in the height of COVID, which was great because there were no contractors working on anybody else but us.
yeah.
Um, I will tell you that we moved that. It was a much more visible area. They had 27 vehicles per day on average going past that. And we're at 41,000 vehicles per day today,
Mm.
going right past that location. This
Did
is
you
a
have
high
like
high growth area, so we look at those things.
yeah. So there's several different factors, but you gotta kind of weigh them because they're never the part that always makes it tricky about doing things like this, where you have like
Mhm.
10 factors. Factor A might be an A plus, factor B might be a C, and so on and so forth. And it's hard to stack that against other locations, right? Because you have all these, those 10 factors competing against each other. And so you really
And how
have
many
to,
competitors are there?
yeah. That's a huge part too. So that is actually, that's really, really interesting. And I appreciate you sharing that. Now, so as far as, so now you have like, okay, I'm growing, I'm adding locations. What are you doing? What is like the most effective things that you're doing that are helping keep patient flow where you want them?
Well, one, we concentrate on, unlike a lot of DSOs, we don't concentrate on locations. We concentrate on same store growth, same store sales, and increasing the number. Even though we haven't increased that many number of locations, we've increased the number of treatment opportunities by 25% in the last 3 years. So capacity is one of, if you're going to market and you're going to get new patients in, make sure you can get them in a timely fashion. So you're probably thinking, well, that's not the question I asked, but it was. You have to be able to accommodate patients.
So that
But
means
some
you're
of the,
just for the listeners, that means you have to have, it's not just about adding locations, it's about adding capacity to those locations. Because you might have the
that's correct.
locations, tons of people have locations right now with no capacity. So they can't grow even if they wanted to.
Yeah. Well, the one that we moved during COVID, we started with 6 operatories. Within 6 months, we had grown so much and the demand was so much, we took the space next to us, broke through the walls, added 4 more operatories in 1 year. And so that was exactly what you're saying. We found the location, it proved itself, and we expanded.
So
And
start
so,
so starting
and
smaller.
now, yeah, that office, we are averaging, I think it's 88 over the last year, 88 new patients per month.
It's really good. And
So,
so you would say, okay, so making sure you got the right location and really focusing on just getting that you said same store growth. So most dental offices don't think that way. Can you kind of dive into that?
well, same store growth is to say, for one thing, what can you do? What can you do better? What can you do more of within an office? That is not just production, obviously it is, with training, with CE, with acquiring procedures or providers that do extra procedures. Can you now start doing other procedures? Do you have somebody that can do endo and implants? Are you doing Invisalign? Are you end? Are you doing sleep apnea? All of those things. So once you do that, capacity is not just number of providers or number of rooms, but it's also procedures. And the number one is same store growth is growth within a location. Internal marketing, still the best,
Yeah.
90 should be 90% of success rate in keeping that new patient that your existing patients send you. So you concentrate on that. Whether you're providing them incentives, we often we don't provide an incentive to our existing patients who send us something, but we do acknowledge them. It might be an Amazon gift card or something like that. And it's the law of the unexpected. We don't even let them know we're going to do it. We let them be surprised afterwards, because that's more powerful than saying, here, if you do this, I'll give you this.
Yeah. Okay. And that's really, really good. I love that. And I know that makes a huge impact because patients in the dental industry are not thinking that that's going to come when you hit them with that.
That's
Um,
right.
and and then how much of your focus is on growth, and how much of your focus is on like more on the clinical side? Because obviously you're just for the audience, you have a killer team because you and your wife, I think, pair very nicely to each other.
Right.
You are obviously on the clinical side. Your wife loves spreadsheets, and your wife loves like taking and chopping everything apart number wise and
Right.
bringing it all back together to make sense. So, how much of your time are you focused on like, hey, this is where we're going versus, hey, let's make sure we have what we need right now and make sure the people that we have what they need? What's your breakdown look like? Because and the reason I'm asking you this as you get ready to answer, there's a lot of doctors who are at 2 or 3 locations that are going to listen to this, and they are in the chair still. They want to get out of the chair, and they're struggling at that. I'm sure you went through something similar early on. So
Sure.
I would love to get your kind of perspective on that.
And that's an excellent question. It's also very important, something that I've even mentored some people in emerging groups. One, make sure you're ready to get away from the chair.
Mm.
And that's okay if you are. It's also okay if you aren't. But if you don't want to get away from the chair, if you really still want to be clinical, you want to still be at the chair and you want to run that part of it, well, then hire a CFO or a COO.
There you go.
And that's true. Now, if you want to be away from the chair because you want to be in operations and everything, as you get to that third and fourth location, you can't do everything. So even if you get away from the chair and you're now the CEO, COO, my other advice is hire a CFO. You're going to need one either way.
Yeah.
Now, that person can wear more than one hat, but you have to make that decision. So back to what do? I certainly am in the clinical side. I have a lot to do with the training and mentoring that we do. I certainly am intimately involved in the technology that we acquire. I do not get in the business of creating the numbers. I certainly am provided those, and I look at those. But I'm blessed. You're right. We're blessed. We're family owned. My wife, Allison, as the COO and CFO, she's great. You're right. She loves spreadsheets, makes birthdays easier. Just get her a spreadsheet. Uh, my daughter-in-law, Becky, who you know is our chief marketing officer, does a great job with that. And one of my sons is involved, who does he does all our compliance and logistics and supply chain management, which takes a lot of the things off that somebody in my position might have had to do. And I did do them. And when we got to 3 or 4 offices, I was still trying to do a lot of that and work 3 to 4 days a chair. I said I'd only do 2, and then it became 3, and then long-term patients. Can you just okay? I'll do half a day on the 4th day, and that was when I got my nickname at the time called Bottleneck, because I was the bottleneck.
I've been there too. I've been
Yeah,
the bottleneck before. I definitely understand that.
yeah. But you have to make that decision. It's a hard decision. We went to school. We were clinically oriented, and there's nothing wrong with that. But be smart enough to get that help. And the other thing, and Gary, you may be aware of this, but that we did is we created our management platform early. We've always done it a little bit differently. We always created more platform than we needed to grow into it, instead of growing a platform after we needed it.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, because
It
when
costs
you're
money and it'll cost EBITDA, but
yeah, but if you're not going to sell the right away,
that's
then
right.
the EBITDA doesn't really matter, right? At that point, you're building
No.
with a vision, and I think, see, what happens too with a lot of doctors is that they realize at around 3 practices that to grow, you're actually going to have to take a financial hit by stepping out of the chair, giving that
Mm-hmm.
production to another doctor. But to your point, and you alluded to this, is I don't think you can be a full-time dentist and a CEO of a growing group. I just don't think it's not enough hours in the day, right? There's not you're something's going to get the short end of the stick, and it's more than likely the CEO
Yeah.
position, because
Yeah.
that's more passive, where the dentistry is more active, and you're there with the patient at that moment.
Well, and only one of those directly creates revenue.
Yeah, yeah. CEO indirectly creates revenue, where the
That's right.
dentist, yeah.
Yeah. But it is, and it's probably the toughest decision that I, as a dentist, had to make.
How did you turn that corner and say, this is what I want to do? Was it just time to get out of the chair for you, or did you realize that the entrepreneur side was more enjoyable to you, or what helped you turn that corner?
I do enjoy the entrepreneurial side. I enjoy the challenge of it. I like the business development side of it. But to this day, I'm not completely out of it. Uh, but what I did, I also noticed, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, especially in the last 2 years, and it's really almost a marketing thing as far as recruitment. is mentorship. I spend a good portion of my time going to the different offices. I interact with the teams, and I think that's very important. Had a new employee in one of our Richmond offices the other day. It was there, and she goes, I introduced myself. She goes, "Oh my God, I've never worked in a place where, like, the guy who owned it, I got to meet." But it's mentoring, and if I can mentor doctors and help them develop skills that help our patients, it helps us, helps them become successful. It helps us become successful. And
does
pure
that
and simple.
fulfill some of that? So helping these dentists learn how to interact with patients or how to diagnose treatment properly, does that fulfill some of that old clinical want that you had? Does that fulfill that for you?
Well, sure. And look, even from a little bit of the clinical ego part, I walk into there and they go, "Oh, you're Dr. Morrison, and you're going to help see me today." And so I let them know I'm going to team treat. We call it team treating. I'm going to team treat with your young doctor here, and we're going to help solve your issues. And they're like, "Oh, this is great." And what I've done is I've successfully handed off a more complex procedure, maybe, to a younger doctor and help them with it. I also have helped them understand patient relationship and case presentation.
Yes. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. And I know that's the number one thing that all associates want. They all want mentorship and they very
Yeah.
rarely get it. The thing that I've talked to tons of doctors of all stripes, and they usually say, we don't get that mentorship. So that hands-on is just huge. It makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. We actually buddy them up when they are in their organization with a senior doctor. And there's not always, senior doctors not always in the same location, but we have cloud-based software. We can do real-time consults. We have encrypted Gmail accounts so they can ask questions about protected patient information. It's cloud-based. I can access what they're looking at right then, whether it's a video or photograph or whatever.
That's so cool.
So we can do that remotely. It's kind of like teledentistry, but this is telementoring.
Yeah, that's a really great point. You know what? I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that. I'm sure people are doing it. Obviously, the technology's there, but thinking through that, if I have somebody here helping me, whether it's on a Zoom call like we're on right now, or they're in person, if they know more than I do and I'm able to get improve my skills really, really quickly, that's a huge, huge advantage.
Well, if you got a cloud-based software and you're a chief clinical officer, that's a force multiplier. Being in the car and driving these places is what takes the
Yeah.
length of time.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I've never even thought about it. Obviously, I'm a remote company, so I don't even logistically, I don't even think about those things, right? Like when I have to drive somewhere to meet somebody or something, I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do? I have to block off my whole day. But with remote, you can just go meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting and get a lot done. This has been really good. Is there so if, let's pretend that you have a stadium full of dentists. They have 4 practices on average, 4 or 5 practices on average, 3 to 4, 3 or 5, somewhere in there, practices, and they are working on getting out of the chair. They're working on their marketing. They're working on all the stuff that you just listed. That all intrigues them, right? They hear it and they go, "Man, I want to get to that point in my career." What would be your one message to them to help them along the journey?
And it's the same thing that I go back to is, one, find your vision, but that needs to be related to, and if you haven't defined them, you or someone needs to define your core values.
Yeah.
We have a set of core values, had them for a long time. I didn't make them up. My employees made it up. My staff made it up. We helped them along the way. It was a journey, and we like to say we hire, fire, and acquire based on our core values. And if you stay true to that, then it helps you evaluate that next practice, and it helps you evaluate the one you're in, evaluate the people that are in it, and how do you improve that. And the cheapest way to expand is same store sales.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm the same way. It's, before we had core values and our why, and it was so hard to get people aligned. It's and a lot. I honestly thought that all that culture stuff was just fluff early on in business. I just thought, oh, people are just talking about that. Whatever, you don't need that.
Yeah.
But then I very quickly figured out that actually you do need it, and that's the life breath of the business, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
only way to keep your team aligned. It's the only way to keep things going the way that you want. Otherwise, what ends up happening, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will understand this, the reason things go off track all the time is because you're playing by a different set of rules than your team's playing by.
Right.
They have a different set of standards, maybe better, maybe worse, who knows, but everybody's playing by their own set of rules. And yes, you may tell them how to do the job, but not why they're doing the job and where they're
Okay.
going overall. And that really makes a huge difference. So that's a great
Yeah.
piece of advice.
Well, and Gary, as you know, as we've watched you grow, is the larger you get, it becomes even more important.
Oh yeah.
It is so much harder to keep a growing large organization together. You have to have something that binds them together.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, and it gets more complicated. That's the other part that
Yeah.
it's not going to it doesn't get easier. It gets more complicated. It may get less labor intensive from like I'm not doing the clinical work anymore and stuck doing that one thing. I'm doing more things now, and it maybe you can set your schedule a little bit more flexible, but that doesn't make it easier. It gets more complex as you grow, and each level requires new challenges and new skills that you have to learn, and every step, like when you go from one office to two offices, that's a big shift there. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're from on-site to off-site. Just that alone is a huge mental shift, a huge management style, how you're supporting the team,
Mm-hmm.
and then every step along the way, it gets more and more complex and adds different challenges and problems. And you guys have done a great job. I love the spirit that you guys have. I love the attitude, the way you guys tackle problems, and everything that you guys do is always top notch. So I appreciate the opportunity not only to work with you, but also just to interview you today. It's been really good. Any last words for the audience?
Well, and I think the audience that will benefit the most by this is, industry partners. We have such great industry partners. Gary, you're one of those. But whether it be CareStack, whether it be Patterson, whoever it is, and these are people that they have stuck by us, we have stuck by them. We don't chase 3% or 5%, here or there, because they have brought so much to the table for us, and they're people that we can count on. We have 30-year relationships with some of these. And then the last thing is the effect and importance of social media is going to continue to increase. It's not going to decrease. Again, we kidded each other about yellow pages here at the beginning, and we started out with that. The decision was, I don't know, do I bold it? Do I take a quarter page?
Yeah, quarter page, half
And,
page. Yeah,
but the reality is, even though it can be difficult, and one thing you can say about social media, it will change.
yeah, yeah.
But
It won't
do
stay the
not
same.
negate the importance of that. And you, as the founder, owner, dentist, please, for the love of God, don't do that. Let somebody else do it that knows what they're doing and has the time to do it.
Yeah, everything online is the speed now with AI that everything's changed. It's
Mm-hmm.
insane. Like it's at the point now. I've always in my life of being in the internet marketing and stuff, I've always been able to keep up with it because my brain works that way anyways. I like jumping thing to thing. Lately, with the AI stuff, I
Mm-hmm.
can't. It's moving so fast. We just emailed the whole team or several of our leadership on the leadership team and said, try to replace yourself with AI. I want you to go out and start using these tools and try to see if you can save 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours. We want to save as much time as possible. If you can replace yourself, great. We got plenty of other stuff that you can work on, but go out and start testing these tools because there's just so many popping out of everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's just going to continue to go and go and go like that. And it's only going to go faster. So 100% agreed.
Yeah, we're using AI in a lot of things in our business, including things like eligibility verification. We've been able to
Ooh.
replace some of the people that were doing those for us. Now, because we've grown and revenue has increased, now they're doing part of our revenue cycle management.
That's awesome. That's such a good point. Any other AI that you're using? Are you using
Yeah, we're using the radiographic diagnostic interpretation. So, and
what company do you use for that again?
Pearl,
Pearl.
Pearl,
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
and and again, all of those things make sense. And in some ways, even EFT and insurance posting, that's really AI based as well. A lot of that is. And so with inflation, with wage inflation, with supply inflation and everything, you cannot do it with increasing labor. We just
Yeah.
we don't get reimbursed
Yeah.
more just because it costs more. So we got to be smarter about it.
That's so good. What?
And the human management, it doesn't mean that we're getting rid of people. We're just repurposing them and putting
Yes.
them in a position that helps us and them better.
100%. Yeah. It's not like inside of our business, and I know inside of the dental offices for sure, it's not like everything's getting done every single day. There's a lot of things that are left undone
Yeah.
because we don't have the manpower, we don't have enough hours in the day. So if you can find ways that AI will cut corners on things to get them done faster, then you can use those human bodies to provide a better patient experience, follow up with more patients, and like do a revenue cycle management. All
Yeah.
those things need so much support that it's really almost endless. Like
Well,
we could
we've
keep.
taken everything off a front desk that does not have to do with the patient experience once they hit our lobby.
Smart. Yeah. And I know that I've seen your phone conversion rate. That's made a huge difference.
Yeah, it is. You start taking those things out of it. And AI is being used for the EVs. That's repetitive information. They're going back to the same companies, all the time. But if you're having someone that has to look it up or has to call someone, let a computer do it.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. Well, this has been really, really good. It was great having you on. I appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge and your expertise in the dental industry, Dr. Morrison. And thank you so much for always taking time to chat with me. I always learn so much from you. So
No,
I hope you have a great
always a
day.
pleasure, Gary.
Absolutely.
We'll see you probably at the next conference we see each other at.
Awesome. Have a good day.